how's everything been coming along?
Everything's been going pretty well. With my LSAT journey, I am currently registered for the August LSAT. So I already took it once. And so this is going to be my second retake. And I'm hoping this is the final retake. I'm hoping this is the final retake. My second time around, I definitely feel more confident. The classes have definitely been helping. I kind of like restructured my study plan, and I've incorporated like timed practice tests because before I was just doing the practice test untimed, and I was reviewing that, and and I think like a part of that is like also like anxiety when it comes to time constraints. And so I wasn't even practicing under timed conditions. And so this time I made it a point to make sure I practice under time conditions so I can get used to it, and then be able to finish the exam in time with time to review. Because the first time I took my exam, I was like pressed for time for every section. And I ended up guessing on some of the questions. And so that's one of my goals. One of my goals is to avoid that on the second retake, and to also practice with time, like under timed conditions, so I can improve on my speed and accuracy.
Fantastic. It sounds like
Yeah.
you've got a great plan there. I'm glad to hear how everything's progressing for you so
Yeah.
nicely. It's awesome. Is there any
Yeah.
particular challenge you're facing right now where you could use some support?
Um, Definitely yes. I think with my biggest challenge, like the section I'm having the most trouble with, but like seeing very little improvement each day, is reading comprehension. And a huge part of that is just having ADHD and being able to focus and analyze information in a way that's productive, right? So when I am reading over the reading comprehension passages, it's kind of like I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I don't have enough time. And so I end up glancing over very important information. So when I get to the questions, I'm like skipping around because I have no idea how to answer the question. And so my biggest challenge would be trying to, I guess, know how to read effectively and efficiently without, um, without psyching myself out to the point where I don't feel confident or comfortable answering the questions because I don't have an overall understanding of the passage. So maybe like like helpful tricks and hints, you know, that would help
Absolutely.
me conquer this section.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to keep you
Yeah.
engaged while you're reading the
Yes.
passage in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can give you something to hold on to and just focus on that, the details, you can
Mm-hmm.
gloss over them. You can always come back to them later. So one thing we've
Mm-hmm.
done in the deep dives, and we still do this in Reading Comp Express, is focus on only a passage or two and go over it in depth, focusing on
Mm-hmm.
what's the main point, what's the author's
Right.
opinion. Everything else, you can just note it to go back and find it when you need it later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
I've joined. I think I've had three. Oh man, I think I'm
I've,
losing connection.
you said you've joined three.
Yes, I've attended three of the reading comprehension sessions.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. So that's where you'll see it demoed, and you can watch the recordings
Mm-hmm.
of all the previous ones as well. So
Mm-hmm.
like I said, focus on the viewpoint, the author's opinion, just hold on to that. Another thing you can do is
Mm-hmm.
caricature or exaggerate the different viewpoints being presented, make them a little bit ridiculous, and that might help it become a bit more engaging as well.
Right. Those are helpful. Those are really helpful tips. I think what has helped me the most, like with the classes and the sessions, is like we go through the passage, like so we go through the passage in depth, and the instructor, the facilitator, they kind of break it down in pieces to where I'm like, oh, I didn't think of it this way, or oh, I didn't think to analyze it this way. And so it's the same with the science passages. The science passages are the ones I struggle with the most. And so I was that I was given advice like, okay, so when you're reading a science passage, know that it's not going to be, it's going to be like procedural. So it's going to like go in an order that's like kind of describing, how like how something gets applied. So if we're like talking about, if the passage is talking about, something regarding like earthquakes, and that was one of the passage, it was talking about like earthquakes and how it's like measured using like lichen. And so we literally went through the passage like paragraph by paragraph, and I was able to see how like, oh, line by line, paragraph by paragraph, it kind of explains the procedure of how this like lichenometry is used. And I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that with reading comprehension passages, that science passages are structured that way. So it's like now when I go in and I look at a science passage, I'm like reading for the procedure as opposed to like trying to find the author's main point of view. And that's helped me a lot on the reading comprehension passages.
Fantastic. That's
Yeah.
exactly the goal, is to break it down as simply as possible. Too often students are just kind of rushing through it, not really fully getting it.
Yeah.
So that review process,
literally me.
yeah,
It was
for sure.
literally me.
It was me too. But that's why the review process is so important, because it forces you to go back in slowly and figure out exactly what gave you trouble.
Right. And then another thing is like, I only want to be able to take this test one more time. So it's like, what can I do, or what more can I do in addition to what I'm already doing to, I guess, get over? Because I'm like, right now I'm PTing like in the 160. So it's like, how do I get over this hump and maximize my score even more?
Well, let me ask you this. What are you doing with regard to your review process? You're seeing it in class, so you have a general idea of it. Are you applying it on your end in terms of, are you writing something out?
Like writing out the questions?
No, writing out your review process in some kind of document or journal. So when you get something wrong or have difficulty with something, are you articulating it written down somewhere?
Yeah, so I do that, and I keep track of all the answers I got wrong. And I'm wondering, because it's like I do that, right? So I do the same process. So I look at the answer I got wrong. I explain like, okay, this is why I thought this answer was right. And then I go back and I say, okay, this answer was the correct answer, and I explain why that was the correct answer. And I don't know how many times I have to do that in order for it to be effective, because I sometimes still get answers wrong, regarding like the same question type, if it's like LR, and it's like a weakened question. And it's like I know the answer choices, like if it's like a causal reason, right? If it's causal reasoning and you have to weaken it, it's like I know the four ways to weaken the question, but it's like I think I get caught up in the verbiage sometimes, and like maybe I'm not fully understanding the stimulus, because that's the only way you can get something wrong, right? Is when you don't fully understand the stimulus. And I I think what I can do to improve that is, in addition to like slowing down and making sure like I'm reading everything and I'm reading, to understand, as opposed to just reading to answer the question, like I think that will help. And I think it's a matter of practice. And there's like no shortcuts to this, right? So there's not like a magical way I can, automatically all of a sudden just be good at these question types and answering these questions, unless I put in the work and do, the review process. But I'm wondering if you have any other review tips that I can implement, so I'm
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're recognizing here that this takes time, right? It's not going to happen overnight. There are not any shortcuts. And let's say, for example, you said logical reasoning weaken. Now, when you got a logical reasoning weaken question wrong, you might not have gotten it wrong or had difficulty with it because it was a weakened question in particular. It could have been something about that method of reasoning in general, or it could have been the usage of a word like unless, or it could have been the conclusion being buried in the middle along with a sub-conclusion coming later. So it may not be that you're going to see the gains on your next weakened question, but you may see gains down the line next time you encounter a logical reasoning stimulus containing the word unless, or another question where there's a sub-conclusion going on somewhere. So it happens over time gradually as you identify all the different things that might give you trouble. But some things come up less frequently, so it might be a while before you see it again. but when you see it, you'll get it
Right.
the next time.
Right. And then also I do have another question. So I know a lot of people have been saying like, oh, if you want to like review untimed sections, then it's good to use like PT 70s or like PT 60s and then reserve like PT 80s for like your timed, review practice. And I'm wondering like what your take on that is and like what like should I be looking at prep tests before PT 50 or should I just be focusing on like the later prep tests in my review?
Well, you said you're taking it
And
in
then also,
August,
how
right?
many should I do? Yes.
Sure. So you're taking August. So we're speaking now in early to mid June. You've got about 2 months and change till then. So
Hmm.
I wouldn't recommend spending a ton of time on everything prior to the PTs in the 50s because you wouldn't want to do something in the
Okay.
30s and then never get to the 70s and 80s. So I'd say 50s and up is
Hmm.
probably a good way to go at this stage, 2 months out. I would also suggest, though, that maybe you find certain elements, certain questions from older exams if you want to drill those in particular. For example, if you
Hmm.
want to work on curveball logic games, there are a lot of weird curveball logic games in the older exams. So you might go in targeted
Oh.
just for those in particular. But the majority
Hmm.
of it, I'd keep for the 50s and up. And as for your
Okay.
other question regarding how many, I recommend going into test day with at least 10 practice tests under your belt. But if you,
Oh.
yeah, at least 10,
Okay.
at least 10. But if you want to do more, that's fantastic. Speaking now, 10 would be roughly one exam a week. But if you
Hmm.
wanted to do more and had the space, you could do 2 a week as long as you're allowing enough time for detailed review of those exams.
That is a very okay, good. Because I was trying to, that was like the one thing I was trying to figure out, like what to do, like how many should I do and what would be productive and effective without like overwhelming myself. Because I also work full time. Like I work in accounting and that's like easily 60 hours a week during a busy season. So it's like, how can I balance that out while still making sure I have enough time to dedicate to my study schedule and I'm able to study effectively. So yeah, okay, one a week or like 2 a week. That's I can do that.
Fantastic. Yeah. And make sure they're 4 sections,
I think
not
you
three,
paused.
of course.
Oh yeah,
I was going to say, make sure they're 4 sections, not three,
right.
because
Oh
they're
yes,
adding back
absolutely.
in that experimental in August.
Yeah, and it's an experimental LR, right? It's always LR, right?
No,
So
it
there's
could be,
two
no,
LR.
no, no. It could be anything. It could be any
Wait,
of,
what?
yeah, it could be any
Why
of
did
the,
I thought it was just LR?
that's because the old published prep tests contained a second scored logical reasoning section. But on test day, it could be
Oh,
any of games, reasoning, or reading comp, and it could appear anywhere in the exam.
Steve, I didn't know. I
I'm
wasn't
glad. I'm
prepared
glad
for
we
that.
talked. I'm glad we talked.
Oh my gosh. And I'm sitting here like doubling like LR questions because I'm like, this is the one I'm going to be tested on more. Oh, okay.
Well, it's good that you're no. I know it's a shock. I know a lot of other people are probably confused about that as well. But it's good you're learning now. We're still more than 2 months out, so change it up. You've gotten plenty of LR practice. You can now start mixing in games.
Right.
You can start mixing in reading
And
comp.
like reading comprehension for sure. Reading comprehension. Oh my God. Okay.
But it won't count though. It won't count. You might do double.
It
You
won't
might do
count.
double reading comp, but hey, that second one won't count.
If I do double reading comp, I think I'll go insane.
Well, let's take the next 2 months to make it so that you won't even mind when you
I
encounter it
know
because
that.
you'll have it under your
Okay.
belt.
So that definitely means I'm going to start. Okay. Okay. Wow. Thank you for telling me. I did not know.
Of course, Akila. Of course, I have a whole FAQ
Yeah.
on the 4 section LSAT, so take a look at that. It's
Okay.
currently linked on my homepage,
Definitely.
and we also have
Uh-huh.
it in the course.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Those are my only questions.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad we
Yeah.
connected, Akila. I'm glad we
Yeah.
clarified the
Same here.
experimental section thing as well. So you can add that into the
Yeah.
mix going forward, and just keep at it, keep showing up, and reach out if you need anything at
Hmm.
all. I'm glad to help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Steve.
Of course. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.